My next guest, comedian Mary Bourke, was not supposed to be here tonight. She was meant to be performing at a comedy club, but it's been cancelled, or at least her appearance has been cancelled, because audience members complained that her material might make them feel unsafe. So here's the clip that probably provoked the backlash.
And the reason they invited me for a smear test, ladies and gentlemen, was because according to their medical records, I, Mary J. Bourke, was the owner of a vagina and or a cervix. Dear NHS Trust, here's a list of all the things I'm not. I'm not a vulva, I'm not a vagina, I'm not a cervix, I'm not a menstruator, lactator, incubator, child curator. The word you are looking for is woman. I am an adult biological woman. How dare you reduce me to a biological function or a body part? How dare you, when I am obviously once, twice and 3 times a lady, ladies and gentlemen. And the thing is, when you say something like that, you instantly get called a TERF, which stands for Trans Exclusionary Radical Feminist. Whenever someone calls me a TERF, I just call them a smurf. We can all make up our own insult words. That stands for sexist misogyny undermining real feminism. And I'm going to keep on calling them smurfs until I'm blue in the face, ladies and gentlemen.
And Mary Bourke joins me now on Free Speech Nation. So, now, I want to talk to you about this because you were meant to be gigging tonight, and it's this complaint of unsafe, feeling unsafe. As someone complained to the club, said, Mary Bourke makes me feel unsafe. I mean, look at you, you're not terrifying me right now. What's going on?
I'm not terrifying. You can't terrify anybody with this accent. It's impossible.
It is impossible.
It's lovely, isn't it? It's very light.
Did you anticipate this kind of thing ever happening to you?
No, and it's never happened to me before either. So I'm just stunned. I'm like, first, and the ironic thing was, I wasn't going to do that material at the club.
Right.
Because I've got Edinburgh coming up.
Yeah.
And I've got loads of jokes to do about my disabled husband. And I'm doing a whole show about his hemorrhagic stroke. So trust me.
I'm sure
that the idea of taste doesn't come into it when it comes to my comedy. No way.
But, so, what did they give you any details as to who had complained or
no,
the extent of the
they
complaint?
just said the material was problematic and it had been brought to their attention, which sounds very like the Stasi kind of interrogation.
It does a bit.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming it was that clip, because that clip went viral online. And
it would have been that one. And plus it has TERF in the title.
And it has TERF in the title.
And I said, you know I'm actually talking about misogyny in language. You know that, don't you? Mm. And then the promoter's like, well, I just can't take the risk.
So in terms of that, I mean, do you think the promoters have a point in a way insofar as they're trying to make money?
Oh, look, I understand it's a business. But there's also the issue of free speech, but it comes down to money. And so they thought, yeah.
But is it true that a few complaints, I'm presuming on Twitter, right?
Oh, look, it could have been about 3 people or it could be one person with 3 different accounts.
Yeah.
But that's enough to spook people and get them to panic.
Yeah.
And just call me.
It's interesting because I've heard this from a number of comics, and there's one comic who you and I both know who did an Edinburgh show, and that members of staff at the Edinburgh venue complained that his material made them feel unsafe, and it was the same word every time we get this word unsafe. Luckily, the venue just...
When did kind of cowardice become a fetish? I mean, when are people proud of being cowardly?
It's odd, isn't it? I mean, I had the same thing. I ran a stand-up course at a theatre in London.
I'd be mortified to tell people I was afraid. I was afraid of like someone standing on. It's insane.
Well, but the point. My point is that people capitulate, right? So my course was stopped because someone said that I made them feel unsafe.
Well, you make me feel unsafe.
I do, yes, yeah.
I mean,
I understand
that's like everybody.
I'm a very intimidating person. But I think no, they actually said it was because of a tweet I did, a joke. And they said the joke made them feel unsafe. I'm like, but you want to be a stand-up. You're on a stand-up course, right? And if a joke makes you feel unsafe, and then the whole thing was stopped. So it's happening more and more. And that, to me, is I mean, your example is one of many. So it's not just... This is now... What I'm saying is I think it's becoming normal.
It has become normalised, yeah. And the idea is I don't want to see it, therefore nobody can see it.
Right.
Which is the height of narcissism, you know?
So is the problem the narcissists, or is the problem the people who capitulate to the narcissists?
The gatekeepers have to grow a pair and stand by their performers and not capitulate to a handful of... Who are these people anyway?
Well, quite. So, Scott, do you have any thoughts on this? Because I just want to bring you in here. So have you ever had people... I mean, look, Scott, a lot of your material people do find offensive. I think that would be fair to say.
That's why they come to the show. They want to be offended. Hopefully they will be. Then they get their ticket price, right? But I have played the venue that Mary was meant to play tonight once and had my life threatened by a gaggle, I think you call them, of angry LGBT people, mostly gay women, who were banging their beer bottles against the table singing hooligan songs throughout my set. And two gay men, a couple in the front row, threatened me and said they thought I was disgusting. I had to be escorted out by security. So you're probably better off.
Maybe you dodged a bullet.
at that same venue. I'll never be invited back. I agree with you, though. I think that the promoter, whoever is running that show, has to stand by their bookings and their comedians and believe in the show. I mean, I know that show's been around for a long time. It's given a lot of work to people, and that's good.
Yeah.
But I think also comedy, when it becomes a big business, because the person who hosts the show is quite famous, and when that show becomes big business, then money gets involved.
Yeah.
And suddenly what you have is something that isn't really there to serve the audience. It's there to pay the bill.
But that's what I mean, is that the reason I have some sympathy with promoters who are in this position as well is that these people could be quite scary. Right? Sometimes when they go online, it's not just, I find this offensive, I feel unsafe. It's like, we're going to make trouble for you.
Well, bring it. Bring the ballards, bring the posters. Let's see it happen. Let's see a reaction. Let's see you really say something instead of...
Because we had all this when we did the pilot for Unsafe Spaces on Radio 4. There was all that Twitter malarkey about, like, we're going to disrupt the taping.
Yeah.
And do you know who showed up? Nobody.
Of course.
Yeah, that's right.
That was all Twitter nonsense, and nobody showed up. They had to get extra security. Someone was going to walk me back to the tube and make sure I got home safely. Nobody showed up.
Yeah, that's right. And that was an interesting one. So this was for a Radio 4 pilot that you and I were both involved in. We both did stand-up sets, and activists went crazy because they were saying this was an anti-woke thing.
Which it wasn't.
Which it wasn't. They just decided it was, and they decided about something that wasn't even on. And then they said, we're going to go and disrupt, or calling on other people to disrupt. No one did. And the audience were great.
Well, they were lovely. They're just people who come to BBC tapings, yeah.
What do you think about all this, Lewis? I mean, you again, I would say, fall into the bracket of sometimes saying controversial things.
Well, people...
I'm constantly nervous when you're on my show. That's what I'm saying, yeah.
I mean, Mary is, and she knows this, is one of my favourite comedians. She knows this.
Yes.
And if Mary Bourke is bad, that I would want to be in that club.
Really?
Really. Because it means, I don't want to, the left has lost. They've gone too far if they're going to ban someone like...
I mean, look, if it was someone who was going on stage and, shouting racial slurs or something like that, I mean, it's so the opposite of what you are on stage, and we saw that clip. But I think it's this particular issue, isn't it? It's
this particular issue. People don't actually listen to what I'm saying. They just hear the word turf, and that's it. Boom, they're off.
Right.
The thing is, the audience will dismantle what's going on stage. They will interpret it. And if that comic is good, they will succeed. If they're bad, they won't. In this country, I think the comedy business is incredibly successful because the quality of the comedy is high, because the audience demands that. I really do believe that. I'm not just saying that. I think here, they require a certain level of discourse and performance.
Yes.
And if you're garbage and you're yelling expletives that don't make sense,
they'll let you know.
They won't show up. They won't come back.
Yeah.
It'll take care of itself. You don't need to intervene.
But I think it's weird because, so Scott and Lewis, I would say, have experienced walkouts and people getting very angry about the things they're saying and the offensive things. But I don't associate that with your act. Of course, I haven't been at every show you've done. But is this completely new to you? It's
completely new to me.
But do you know what I mean? Like, you're not...
But it's made me think, I'm going to die on this hill and there's going to be no survivors. It's made me... I'm just going to keep going. I'm not going to be silenced. I'm really angry about it, actually.
Yeah. Well...
but I think the future, can I just say...
Of course.
The future is, like, as you're saying, I hope the promoters get a set of whatever.
Yeah.
And defend the... But that's not going to happen. What's going to happen is there are going to be separate comedy clubs for the separate groups. You want to call them left and right, whatever.
Yeah.
There will be separate comedy clubs. And eventually, over time, there will be... Some will win and some will change. And eventually, it'll morph into something. There's no...
Well, when we set up Comedy Unleashed, the point was to say, look, if it's not a safe space. Comedy's not a safe space. So we cultivate an audience that don't come along and complain if they're offended, because we're not going to listen if they're offended, because that's their issue. It's their issue to deal with. And people have said at the time, well, there's no need for a club like this.
Well, there is.
But now there is.
Yeah.
So maybe we're just a bit ahead of the
Because I'm going to be there on Tuesday, and I'm going to talk about this. I'm going to name names on Tuesday now. But, I'm going to talk about it.
Definitely
there is a need for it,
Yeah. I mean, it's fascinating.
Well, I think names should be... I think you... I mean,
Don't,
No, Lewis, we're not going to do that. We don't want to do that. We don't want to turn it into a big bun fight.
But it should be. It should be somebody say, you know, we're not going to go to that club, and then they're going to think twice about cancelling.
Well, anyway, look, Mary, I really appreciate you coming on and talking about this, because I don't think people think it's real. I don't think when...
But I will be doing the same material at Comedy Unleashed, the backyard on Tuesday. So if you want to see it, come to the backyard.
Yeah, come to the backyard. Good. Plug my show. That's
yeah, exactly.
Good for you. All right, Mary Burke, everyone.